So I'm 27 years old. I've never actually been on a date. And so that's part of my motivation for all of this.
Why not?
I don't know. I think, well, I remember staying home from prom in high school to play League of Legends instead, a video game. And I think that was representative of most of the choices I made since then.
Okay.
Like I chose to do my own thing instead of getting out there and risking rejection to connect with people until now. And I think that's becoming a more and more common story because the number of men under 30 who are still virgins is actually growing. It has been growing over the last 25 years. So it's getting pretty high now, that statistic. I think it's over 20%. So I'm realizing I'm not as alone as I thought. And I want to show other young men that there's nothing to be ashamed about, but that maybe they should take actions, like there is a path out of it if they want that. But now I think in today's world with video games, Netflix, weed, porn, like people have so many options of things to do to not engage, one-on-one.
Right.
And to not risk going out there, being humiliated, being exhausted, trying to date. And
Because people suck.
right. People can suck.
Yeah, and you take the easiest route. So.
Right.
Yeah.
The easiest route is just, stay at home,
Exactly.
get the guaranteed comforts.
Exactly.
So my story is I'm from Canada. Originally I was born in India, but my parents moved to Canada when I was 13. Other than that, I grew up in Sharjah for a little bit from age 2 to 13, Sharjah, UAE. And I've never been to the US until now. And I actually worked in government for about a year and a half, the Canadian Revenue Agency, basically the IRS of Canada.
Right.
That job wasn't very fulfilling for me, so I quit 6 months ago, started this podcast, and I realized this is what I want to do with my life. So I feel very grateful that I've discovered what I love doing.
Okay.
Just conversations with people, learning from them, hearing their stories. Yeah.
So you're at the age now where you want to interact with people,
Yes.
whereas before it was like,
Yeah. I was still curious. I think what helped me discover it was online interaction. So I met Marcus through a video game online, and we had deep conversations. Actually, my friend in New Hampshire, I also met him through the same video game. And so I went and visited him. I stayed with him, his wife, his 2 daughters. I learned a lot. So I think connecting with people online showed me that people are actually amazing. They're great, for me anyway. And I like connecting with them and learning from them. And I realized some of the best advice I've gotten has been through interactions like that. So yeah, I want to do more of that.
okay, that's pretty cool. Okay.
So the main topics for the podcast, I'm narrowing it down to like, what does it mean to be a good man? What is healthy masculinity? What role does fatherhood play in a fulfilling life? What does it mean to be a good father? And then what does it mean to be a good boyfriend, husband, like in a relationship with someone, long term? Those 3 things.
So you've never had a girlfriend?
I've never had a girlfriend. I've never kissed a girl. And I'm actually afraid of many of those things because I think my mind has gone to all these places of putting pressure on myself of what will that be like, and when really I'm assuming that's what it was like for everyone before their first time.
Yeah.
And I feel in some sense behind.
And it's for everyone the first time, everyone the first time with every relationship, new relationship. So,
Right.
will she like me? Won't she like me? Yeah. It's kind of like. Were your parents, did they show affection?
My dad was not home that much. And actually I don't drink or smoke. And
Me
part
either.
of that, you don't? Okay, interesting. Part of that is because my dad, he's 62 now, and he still drinks and smokes basically every day. So, and he used to get drunk and like hit my mom, me, and my brother. So for me, he was a role model of like, okay, I'm not going to become like that. So as a kid, I got curious about books about, abuse, relationships, things like that, psychology, because I was thinking to myself, how can I not grow up that way? Because I read about the cycle of abuse, and I was like, okay, how do I not perpetrate that? So I think my dad was often working, so my mom was mad at him for not being home enough. And I think my mom did show affection, but she was probably overwhelmed because she also worked and tried to raise 2 kids. And she used to travel for her work and stuff like that. So I think she had some trouble. So I'm guessing for most of my childhood, I was mostly alone or with my brother.
Okay, and how is your brother?
My brother is 7 years older than me. He's 33. I'd say he's turned out pretty well. When I was in Canada, I was actually living in a townhouse that he bought with his wife. He recently got married. So I'd say he's doing pretty well in life. He's been a meditator for 14 years. Actually, my latest interview on the channel is with him.
Oh,
I interviewed him about meditation and spirituality.
Okay.
So he said he's discovered how you can be happy in the moment, not really trying to chase external factors. Just be happy with the way things are and pay full attention to the present moment, and then stuff goes from there.
Well, there's something to be said about that. I think a lot of times we try and, live like we see other people living and live up to other people's expectations. And I think we all did it. Oh my God. Yeah, I think we all did it. I know I did. For years I tried to live up to other people's expectations. I got married and knew I shouldn't have been married, and got divorced, and so it was different. But there was a moment where I just decided, excuse the expression, screw what other people think.
Exactly.
And I just started living my own life. And at that point, once I took control of my life and who I wanted to be, everything kind of happened for me.
How old were you at that point?
Oh gosh, probably. See, I got married at 20. I got married at 25. 25 or 26. And we were actually together for maybe 2 years. And then we divorced probably probably 8 or 9 years after that. We got to the point where we were actually friends. She didn't want to divorce. And I just knew it wasn't for me. But we became friends.
Right.
We had a child together. But, once I was out of that and I was actually able to kind of live for me, I was like, I can't live for other people.
So maybe you were like 35 to 40 when you started living for yourself?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I got to the point where I didn't care what people thought of me, which meant family, friends, most importantly, co-workers. I was at the point I didn't care what other people thought. And it was at that point I started to live for me. Hey, I wasn't afraid to take a chance. And for a long time, that's what it was. I was afraid, okay, what would they think? And it was just so freeing to just say, okay, I don't care anymore.
But if you're thinking about the ramifications, his viewer base.
At this point, I don't care.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then go for it, man.
Everybody in Eustis knows. So.
Get it.
But it just never. Yeah, it just never bothered me after that.
So before that, were you like hiding your true self?
Oh yeah.
Even from yourself to some degree? Or mainly just from others?
Mainly from others.
Mainly from
others.
others.
Without a doubt. From
Okay.
Others,
So for a long time, you knew who you were. You just
yeah.
didn't feel safe and free to express
Oh
that.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I was raised. I was raised by parents that, very religious. Yeah, exactly. And there was an expectation that, their son would have grandkids and get married and all that stuff. And I kind of played into that. And then I realized once I did it, oh God, I hate this.
So what led to you choosing accounting in university? What led to you choosing accounting in university?
I always liked numbers. But initially, when I decided to go to college, I wanted to help people. Psychology, sociology, those were my initial degrees. And I got an AA in both. And then I was like, it pays no money. Because initially it was about helping people. And I realized I couldn't take care of the family on that salary.
Right.
So I went into accounting. I got my degree in accounting. And once I got that degree in accounting, I was like, this is boring. So I didn't want to do that. So, but that accounting degree allowed me to work for the federal government.
Nice.
So.
And that's how you got into the Air Force?
No, I did the Air Force right out of high school.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
And the Air Force, did they cover your college? I see. That makes sense. Interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a planner. Yeah.
So you had your career path and everything planned out?
I didn't know it at the time, but I did. So, yeah.
And then how did you end up transitioning into politics?
I retired, and it was that wasn't planned. I had several people reach out to me, several commissioners that were retiring, or they just didn't want to do it anymore. And people said, "Well, why don't you run?" And I was like, I don't think I want to do that. And had someone that was a commissioner that passed away, and she had asked me. She told me, "Willie, you should do this." I'm like, I'm anything but political,
right?
I'm just not that guy, because I'm a very direct kind of guy. And she ended up passing away, and her slot came open, and I thought, maybe this is God trying to tell me something. So I actually applied. There were 15 of us that applied for her vacancy, and I was number 2 out of the 15. And after that, 2 commissioners that were retiring asked me to take their spot, and I was like, okay, this is somebody's trying to tell me to do something, so I did it. I never thought that this would be anything that I would do. Yeah.
And how old were you at this point?
This is not that long ago.
Yeah, this was
2.5, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so
quite
I
recent.
was 60-ish. Yeah.
And as you started it, did it just feel like what you were born to do?
No.
No, it didn't. Okay.
No. Talking is something that I kind of grew into. And I used to be the shy guy, and
I was the same in high school.
well, that's not the case now.
Right.
So, I was this shy guy, and going into federal government, doing what I did, it gave me this kind of courage to kind of just be upfront, and that's what I did.
Be direct.
Yeah, and I parlayed that into this. I never thought about politics, but I always want to help people. The psychology, sociology part of it. Part of what I did was helping people, even though they didn't realize I was helping them at the time. Working for the feds. So,
Right.
So it was a natural fit for me. But believe me, at the time I was like, what the heck am I doing? But I enjoy it. For the most part. There are days now. But for the most part I really enjoy it. There are people that call me up, and they have people that they have things in their lives, and like, I need help with this. And they feel comfortable enough coming to me, asking me to help. I like that. And I'm in a position to do some things. So.
That's one problem Richard Reeves pointed out in that book, is that there's a male identity crisis, because men derive a lot of their purpose historically from being relied upon, from being providers, protectors, being needed. But now more and more women are financially independent, emotionally independent. They can even raise a kid on their own. They have purpose built into their biology, in a sense, because they can give birth to a child. It's very hard for a single man to adopt a kid and raise one legally.
If not impossible.
And culturally, the stigma against that.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
Not anymore.
Not anymore? I'm glad
Not
that.
anymore.
A single man adopt?
Not anymore.
Really?
Not anymore. I think the system now realizes that of course they don't just let anybody adopt. They do the background, but I think more and more you're finding that that men can be just as nurturing
Exactly.
as women.
He's a stay-at-home dad, Richard Reeves. There you go.
Our son is raised by two men, two dads.
Yep.
So, and
He's got
every
a pretty good head on his shoulders
Yeah.
too.
What has that been like, being a father,
oh,
raising a kid?
I was great. Yeah, both of them. You know, my oldest is 35. I don't
Really?
think I don't
Wow.
think you've ever met him.
I haven't.
He lives in Seattle.
That makes
He's
sense.
35, and my youngest will be 21 next month. And I think it's been great. It's probably one of the more it's probably the most satisfying thing I've ever done. And more so with the young one, because the oldest, you know, at the time he was growing up, one, that was the divorce, and they lived in Virginia, and I lived here. Two, I was trying to make my mark.
You're busy
with my career, but I retired when my youngest was in the
8,
8 or 9 years old.
yeah,
Okay.
Well, he was in middle school, so what is that?
8, 9,
Yeah, so I retired.
or no, 10, 11.
What is middle school? Which grade?
6,
6, 7, 8.
6.
So like 10, 11, 12.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I retired. So I was able to.
He was just getting into teenage years.
and that was important for me.
Was he super rebellious in his teens?
No,
No?
really? Neither one of my boys have ever been super rebellious.
Interesting.
And I believe it's because I kind of set those standards. I mean, even with my nephews, you know, I've always been a strong role model with those boys as well. So
What advice do you have for me if I'm a father in the future? How can I do that? Set good standards, be a good role model.
you got to be honest with them.
Completely honest.
That's the most important thing, to be honest. You got to set your boundaries and your standards, and you can't be their friend.
Okay.
So you can't be their friend. I love my boys to death. My youngest now, you know, he resisted, and not in a rebellious kind of way, but because, you know, he lived with his mom, and even though she and I got along together, he lived with her, and anything that I wanted him to do, he was kind of like,
because he could play both sides.
Exactly.
Right.
and he was a mama's boy.
Right.
And I even tell him to this day, I think he was raised in a cult with the church that they went to. I still talk to him about that, and I think he realizes it now. But
Pentecostal or
yeah, but it was like way, like
Holy Rollers.
way. When I met his mom, when we started dating and we got engaged, his grandmother was upset because I didn't, and the pastor was in Africa. She was upset because I didn't wait until he came back to ask him to marry her daughter.
Wow.
And I was like, oh no, this ain't gonna work for me.
So the pastor is kind of like a father figure to considered in that church.
Yeah,
Like you need to ask his permission to marry someone of his congregation.
Decision maker,
Right.
father figure. Yeah, it was just a little too controlling for me.
Right. Too involved.
Yeah, too involved.
Well, they, so to give you an idea, Pentecostals believe in prophecy a lot, right? So when I was a teenager, they prophesied that me and another member of the congregation were going to grow up and get married and all that jazz. And then we actually ended up started dating after that because of that. And then it was it felt super forced.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
They were
know.
trying to make the prophecy come true,
Right.
rather than letting things work
Yeah.
themselves out.
Right. And I mean, to be fair, if that would have ended up being the case, like we were on completely opposite sides of emotional spectrums and definitely political spectrums and stuff. It would have been a really terrible marriage for sure. So
Yeah.
But there are still religions or sects that
Oh yes.
yeah.
Oh yes. But he, we're at the point now because he knew then that he was the son and I was the dad. You know, even now, and believe me, I'll give advice all day long. I think that's probably one of my downfalls is I give everyone advice.
That's what I'm looking for. So,
whether you want it or not. And I think because I gave him so much advice growing up, and I tried to teach him, every opportunity I had growing up, I think it was like, oh God, he's talking again, he's breathing.
Right. He felt lectured to.
Yeah. Right. But now he reaches out to me for advice because he knows. And our conversations are deeper and longer.
Yes.
And, and the same with the youngest. He'll call me when there's, what do you think about this? This is what I want to do. And I let him know it's their decision. But this is what I would do.
You get to be a sounding board.
Yes, exactly. So, and you know what? And that makes me feel good because they trust me enough to reach out to me.
That's how I feel with my dad now too. He's like an advisor, like a perspective, because he's seen stuff in his lifetime I've never experienced.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I can use that experience by just asking him for advice. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you listen to him all the time?
I listen to him, but I don't always agree with him. And even when I sometimes I realize I have to make a mistake on my own.
Exactly, so you can learn from it.
Right. And my dad definitely is there to say, I told you so. But then he helps me pick up the pieces.
Well, and you'll be in that same spot when it's time for, you to give that advice to your kids.
Exactly.
Because that day will come.
Right. And what I've realized with parenting is you have to be okay with your kid being ungrateful for the longest period of time, like even longer than a decade. And then over time, maybe the pieces start to fall together. Because only now, some of the things my dad told me when I was like 12, 15, 17 are starting to hit me like, oh, that's what he meant.
Yeah.
But at the time, I just thought he doesn't know anything.
Well,
yeah.
And that's not just for the kids. Well, I guess it is, because I'm still picking stuff up that my parents told me years ago. So.
It's a lifelong thing.
Yeah.
I don't think I have the same. Like your son is so well rounded, comparatively speaking, when I was his age. You know what I'm saying? Like he had something to go off of. Like role model, like some sort of starting point, jumping board.
Yeah.
Like the amount of nuggets of wisdom that like I received from my father and stuff, it's like night and day. And I mean, you should meet him. Like he's and his group of friends too. Like who was that? The one guy that was out with us that started up that pressure washing business.
Which one was that? Tyler.
17 years old.
Starting his own business.
No, not started. He was making $150,000 a year.
Power washing.
Power washing. And then, like, he was going to sell the business to go off to college and pay for it with the business stuff. Like, amazing. And that's the group of friends that his son had.
Well, that was one of the things that when I retired, I know you can't pick your kids' friends all the time. But one of the things I did is when I retired, I started substituting at his school. And one of the reasons that I did that is because I knew he was at the prime time where he could go this way, the prime age would go this way or that way.
Crossroads.
And I wanted to see the people that he was hanging with. And I wanted them to know who I was. And it worked out. Because not only could I watch his friends, but I could also influence his friends.
Right.
So, and that worked out. That worked out well.
And I think that's really wise because I think too many parents try to control their kids' development as just one single source of influence, but you can't. They're spending most of their time not with you. It's at school, it's with friends, it's with peers, it's on the internet.
Well,
but if you can influence their ideals and their peer group in a way that's positive and growth oriented, then they'll grow from that.
So there's a difference between trying to control your children,
right,
and then being a positive influence in their lives.
Right.
What Willie did was he became a positive influence in not only his child's life, but also
the school, at the kids,
which means you benefited everyone.
Right.
And till this day, I still have kids come up to me, and some of them are adults now. But because of that, I still every now and then I go and I sub at the schools because I know that I may be the only positive that some of these kids get.
And that's
I don't want to have the big head, but
it's true.
I just want to be that part. I can't save everybody, but just a little, how you doing? A little hug, a little fist bump, a little smile.
Encouragement.
Exactly.
All it can take is a small bit of encouragement, and someone's entire life could change.
And they know that, hey, Mr. Hawkins always got my back. I can talk to Mr. Hawkins. And Mr. Hawkins is going to be straight with me.
Right.
That's the big thing for me. So.
I've talked with a lot of parents who, for whatever reason, they tell me that you just have to lie to kids, and I've always pushed back because I think kids are just little people, right? You can take them seriously, you can treat them as respectfully as you treat your peers, adult peers. So they're strong enough to handle the truth, given time.
I've never lied to Logan or any of his friends. I just have expectations,
right?
And I think, that's what they want. They want the expectations. So. And believe me, I expect a lot. So.
What are some examples of expectations, like healthy expectations you've set?
Well, how to carry yourself, disrespect, to me, to adults, other adults, those kind of disrespecting, girls disrespecting boys, girls disrespecting themselves, when it comes to boys. Yeah, I have that conversation a lot. Look, don't dress like that. And especially in that at middle school age, they're still trying to figure out who they are, and the girls are still trying to, figure out who they are, and the boys are trying to show that, I'm this stud, and you're a kid, you don't know what stud is,
right?
So, you just got to be honest with them. That's the big thing, is just being honest with them.
So for men and boys growing up in today's world, what would you say about, what is healthy masculinity? What should they be trying to emulate? Because now a lot of masculinity has been branded toxic, right? Like working out.
See, with me is I don't think you can put it in a container.
Okay.
I think it's, you just be you.
Okay.
I think that whole mold of, big, strong, that's out the window.
Okay.
I'm who I am, and I don't care what other people think. You just have to be happy within yourself. You just gotta be happy.
Okay.
But, when I was growing up, I remember in high school I had the jocks, and they would always tease me because I was a slender guy. And, so you always got teased about that, and at some point it's like, oh well, am I? I don't fit that mold. And then you get to a point again where it's like, I am who I am, and you just live with it. So you don't worry about that stuff. But there's no mold. You just be yourself.
Okay.
And stop worrying about it.
So what does self-improvement or growth look like then, from that perspective? To be yourself.
To me, I think that I lived for so many other people for so long, and I don't think that I truly was happy with myself until I decided that this is my life. This is my life. There were times when I may have contemplated hurting myself, and I was like, wait a minute. And now that seems like years ago. And it's just to be able to kind of look back to where I was to where I am now, and all the things that I've accomplished, everything that I've wanted to accomplish, I have. And I think that was because I finally decided I gotta live for me. I gotta live for me. And I think a lot, and I think that may be a big thing. Is I'm always thinking, like I said, I'm planning a lot, and sometimes things kind of veer off a little bit, but for the most part, I always have a plan A and a plan B. So it just feels good that I look back and it's like, this was great. This life was great. If I had it to do all over again, I would do it the exact same, the exact same way. There are people that say, do you have any regrets? I have absolutely no regrets about the way I live my life and how I live my life. Could I have done things differently with the boys? I probably could have, but would they have turned out the way that they did? Probably not. Oh, thank you.
You are very welcome, sir.
Yes, I have absolutely no regrets.
And I've heard that from a lot of parents, is that they can't have regrets because then their kids would not have turned out the way they did, and they love their kids the way they are.
Exactly. I have two amazing young men. And with me, my story is, my mom, for the first 8 years of my life, she was a single mom with 3 kids.
Wow.
And my real dad, I think that was the last time I saw him, was when I was 8. And my stepdad, who you met, he came into my life, and
he's a good dude.
Yeah, and I started working with him. He taught me work ethic. I was working at 9 years old, making my own money, which was huge. But my dad, from the time I was 8 and a half, he was there.
What kind of work were you doing?
Oh God, my first job, I was cutting grass, and I was making $2. And I was spending my own money, making my own money. And from that, at the age of, I was cutting grass. Then I started a paper route. And then I started working with my dad because he had his own janitorial business. And then I was a delivery boy for a Jewish family. And I did that 3 years. And then I got a job at the local hospital, working in the kitchen, and then I went into the Air Force. But I think having my own money and my own independence,
right?
I think that helped a lot, because having my own money, I could be independent about some things in my life. What I wanted to buy, the clothes I wanted to buy, what I wanted to spend my own money on. So that was good. But everything that I think he and he and my mom were a big part of it. She was a strong woman, and she still is, and he was up until the time he passed away. He was 90 and still going strong, and just still very independent. He gave me a lot of advice growing up. We talked about a lot.
Did he value honesty like you do?
He did. One of the things that he told me, and one of the things I kind of tell my boys is, how proud. Told me, how proud he was. And one of the things that I said during his eulogy, and it wasn't until he was, it probably wasn't until he was in his 70s that he actually felt comfortable saying, I love you. Right. Now, he would say it to my sisters all the time, but to me, in his day and time, men didn't say that to men.
Right.
So I kind of missed that. But I took that, and one of the things that my boys, every time we hang up from the phone, every time we leave, even my youngest, when he's home from college, he'll come in at night, and he'll hug me, and just that display of affection, that's huge. That's huge.
Yeah.
And they know they're men in their own right, even though their dad says they love you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not emasculating. It's
Exactly.
actually just part of healthy masculinity.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you, my dear.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it.
So that's the stuff I've been looking for, because I have a feeling the masculinity of today is going to include vulnerability, empathy, connection to your emotions rather than bottling them up. You don't repress them, you express them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's really cool to see that you are raising your kids that way, and your father in some ways instilled some of that at least, or at least
Yeah.
inspired it.
Yeah. That's, like I said, that's one of the most satisfying things I've ever done, is to become a parent. And to become a parent to two strong men. Jeremy, the oldest one, he's got a little bit more miles on him than the youngest one.
14
But-
years.
Yeah, but he gets it. He's figuring out his life, and he's navigating that, and it's great to see Logan just starting out, and so he's trying to figure out, okay, do I want to go this way? Do I want to go that way? As far as careers, my career path. But with the both of them, one thing they're sure of is that their dad loves them.
That gives you a great sense of
It
stability
does.
in the world.
It does. That over everything that I've done, all the accolades that I've gotten through the years, that's the most rewarding thing ever. Is those two young men. So, a great 30-year relationship, but those are the most important things. So, do you tell your dad you love him?
Sometimes.
Does he tell you he loves you?
Not very often.
Yeah.
It's rare. Definitely I say it more with my mom. I think my mom says it every time we hang up,
Yeah.
basically. So yeah, I should practice that with my dad.
Yeah.
I think it'll help.
Yeah, because that's kind of how it worked with us, and and to hold, I think that took us to another level. Kind of a father-dad. It sounds kind of strange. Kind of father-dad. Son intimacy. When he passed away, we were in a hospital, and just to be able to sit there and hold his hand, and him to look at me, and it was just like, okay, it was all worth it. Just
All of the uncertainty, the sacrifice, the pain, the blood, sweat, and tears.
with
all
that, and I don't think that if we had never been comfortable saying I love you, I don't think that I would have been able to sit there and hold his hand,
Right.
and watch him just leave. So I think I would have probably been in the room, but to hold his hand, as he took his last breath, that was something. So it was, I think it was worth it. So tell him, because you don't want to miss it if something should happen.
It was actually Marcus who we were having a conversation online, and I had to make a choice. Like I hadn't slept. I had to make a choice to go with my dad to see my brother and his wife, or if I should sleep because I hadn't slept that night. And he told me, just go with your dad. You won't regret it. And he shared his story of grief and loss, and it inspired me. So I went with my dad, and I didn't regret it. And I was glad.
Now, do you use that time when you're with him?
Do I use the time?
Yeah.
I actually lived with him for about a year and a half recently before I moved out.
Now, you say you use it. How do you use your time with your dad?
We usually talk. I hear stories from him sometimes, especially if he's drinking, which is every night. Then I'll hear like stories of my grandfather, my grandmother, how he grew up. So my dad had a hard life because his dad died when he was 18, and this was in India, and he had 3 brothers and a sister, all younger than him.
Yeah, take care of.
So he became the dad of the house, basically. And then he had to marry off his youngest sister. And it was really crazy because a lot of his regrets are from succumbing to society at the time.
Right.
Because people in the neighborhood were like whispering, there was gossip, there was a gossip mill that was like, oh, he hasn't married off his daughter yet, oh, the wedding's not going to be great.
Mm-hmm.
And he regrets that he ended up selling the family house because that was like the generational wealth that his dad had built up.
Right,
His dad was a doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But he ended up selling it, and he remembers people coming into the house and just taking things out, and he just gave in to the pressure, and I think he regrets not being stronger in his sense of self-worth.
But he was still...
He was 18, 19.
Exactly.
You can't blame him, and I
Exactly.
don't blame him. Yeah. But he blames himself.
Mm-hmm.
And today he feels like he's not the elder brother he should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And he loved his dad, so I think he still misses him. So
Mhm.
I do feel lucky that I still have my dad.
Yeah, but do you talk to him?
Yeah.
Okay, now you say you talk to it, but
Do we connect?
yes,
Mm.
because you do a lot of listening. Do you do a lot of talking?
Sometimes, yeah. With my dad, it's a bit hard because I've tried to connect on that level, but I find he's not very comfortable with his emotions usually.
Mm-hmm.
He prefers to stay on the intellectual rather than getting into like the meat of something because it might be emotionally tough.
Do you do the conversations when it's the three of you, him and your mom, or
No, they're divorced now.
oh they are? So
yeah,
it's just
they've
him.
been for a while. Yeah, for the last 14 years since we came to Canada. Actually, they've been divorced.
Okay.
So it's just him. He still goes and drives my mom to the grocery store sometimes and stuff because they live in the same city.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he likes being relied upon a
Right,
little bit.
right,
Yeah,
exactly.
being useful.
And it was probably her decision to get divorced.
Yes, it was.
So, and he hates that because he wishes he had done things differently,
Yeah,
but he won't say it.
he won't say it.
Okay.
And he's still being pressured by his brothers because they're like, "Why are you driving your ex-wife to the grocery store? Why are you helping her? You owe her nothing." And so sometimes he'll get mad at her, but I can tell he's really just mad at his inability to just withstand that pressure.
Exactly.
But I feel like he's taught me a lot because of who he is. Like I've learned to grow up less passive aggressive. I've learned to be more in touch with my emotions, more direct with people. Because my dad is one of the people who encourages me to beat around the bush or sort of tactfully lie, like use euphemisms and things like that. And I've always told him, no, it's not for me. I don't want to do that. And I think slowly over time, he's grown more respectful of who I am and our differences.
Right.
And I've grown more respectful of some of his strengths. So he misses. So from age 13 onwards, I didn't have my dad until about 23 when we reconnected. So 10-year gap. And he misses that he didn't get to teach me things like how to nail in a painting or fix a basic motor tool or something, right? So I have no physical... So this woodworking with Marcus is my first physical experience.
Really?
Yeah, other than that, I've always worked office jobs, computers, technology.
Where do you want to be in 5 years?
I'd like to make this podcast like a successful enterprise so that it's self-sustaining. It's generating at least a few $1,000s a month in income. Because I've realized this is what I'd love. If I could do this every day for 40 years, I would love to do that.
Okay. And that's all good. Where do you want to be personally?
Personally,
Not professionally.
not professionally. Okay.
Does he know I ask a lot of questions?
He's figuring
I can
it
tell.
out.
Yeah, you're like me. You're curious and you like listening. We're similar. And if I go to university, it'll probably be for psychology or something like that. I skipped university. But yeah, so who do I want to be? So I think I spent most of my life not wanting to get married because I saw my parents' marriage. I didn't like it because they were unhappy even long before they got divorced. And I didn't want to be a parent because I thought,
Right.
I couldn't do that. But now I've changed my mind recently because I've realized, I could do better. I could do differently. And it's probably the most meaningful thing I'll do with my life if I become a parent, a father. So that's why I'm diving into all this. So I think in the next 5 years, I would like to find a good life partner, someone I'm willing to build a good life with, and have a child and be a father. And I'd like to be really involved like you are. Like I think becoming a substitute teacher at your kid's school is genius because you get to be a mentor to all those kids and you get to help your son and you're volunteering and serving.
Yes.
It's meaningful.
Yeah.
If that is the new goal, then if your 5-year plan includes that, then your steps taken today should show that.
Right. So that was actually going to be my final question to you. But before that, something he mentioned that I thought you've done a really good job addressing in your personal life. He mentioned that because he's come up with this idea of HEAL, an acronym, HEAL. So we've put a lot of funding into getting women into STEM, girls and women into STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. So he's saying men need to get into healthcare, education, administration, and literacy. There are very few English teachers who are male. And he said black teachers who are male make up less than 2% of all teachers. So you becoming a substitute teacher became a positive role model for all sorts of young boys, including black boys, which they really need. They're heavily positively influenced by that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's mostly the black kids to see it, but then there are other kids that never see, because in elementary school,
most teachers are female. Exactly.
yeah, because the nurturing thing and all that.
Yeah.
But by the time they get to me, because I won't do elementary school,
Right.
but I started middle. But for some of them to see me, they can kind of identify with me, which is really cool.
It's important.
Yeah. So yes, they see it as well. It's like,
Of course.
okay, he's not the scary boogeyman.
Exactly.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think that challenges, if they've grown up in households where their parents happen to be racist, then that challenges those notions and they grow up with better ideals, more realistic ones. So
Exactly.
That's good. Yeah.
And during the campaign, I had kids that I never would have thought would have. Hey, I talked to my parents about you, and we want you to put a sign up in our yard. And I'm like, really? So yeah. So changing minds and changing ideas, that's a good thing.
And I think kids can be very influential on their parents.
Did not find that out.
Yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, the final question I wanted to ask you was just what advice do you have for me specifically that I can put into motion? Because Marcus is right, he's on my ass about it, which is good. Which is I'm not taking enough steps. Like I went to make a dating app and I was really nervous about it and I didn't.
What are you afraid of?
Rejection is one, I think.
Guess what? And I have this is the same conversation that I had with Logan.
Yeah.
It's gonna happen. And what are you gonna do about it?
Try again, I guess.
And what may happen the second time?
Rejection.
Okay. And the third time.
Right.
It makes you stronger. Yeah. That, you know what? You get rejected, you dust yourself off, and you go back again. But it's gonna happen.
I'm also worried about seeming like a creep.
Are you?
I don't think so.
And
I mean,
what does a creep seem like?
You can be seen as one. Like, if you're on a date with someone,
yeah,
I would suggest not trying to interview them.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I should listen and ask some questions.
Well,
be curious.
And everyone, it's not always going to be that perfect fit.
Right.
And you're going to, believe me, I kissed a lot of frogs before I found my prince.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you're not going to know until you get out there.
So I just have to put myself out there.
Yeah. And as long as you're not a creep. But communication, you got to communicate. You got to talk. Don't be afraid. And guess what? If she turns you down, there's probably 3 or 4 that are waiting to meet you. So, okay. Dude, don't worry about it.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything that you can take from sitting here talking to this old guys, get out there and take a chance. Don't be afraid.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be afraid. You're going to get rejected. We all have. This has been rejected plenty of times.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's hard to believe.
It is hard to believe. Yeah.
Okay, he's bullshit.
No,
Yes.
I'm not bullshitting you. Because to me, it seems like you've had your life figured out for a long time. Even when you weren't sure, you were still doing things, right? For me, I am kind of that basement dwelling stereotype, someone who just played video games, has no experience, socially awkward, all of that. So it's hard for me to grow out of that identity and treat myself more positively.
But you're doing it.
I'm working on it.
Because I can tell you right now, sitting here talking to you, you can carry on a conversation. Socially awkward, you listen, you ask a lot of questions. Women want that. They want a guy to get to know them. Ask questions. Nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't be, rubbing on them while I'm asking questions or anything, but but have those conversations. Just talk to them.
Yeah.
There's so many guys out there now that are after women for just one thing.
Sex.
I'm not saying what that one thing is.
Sure.
To be fair,
I said it,
though,
you did. Yeah.
there's a lot of women out there that only offer one thing now.
Well, that's true. Yeah, that is true.
Because I mean, men don't care about finance and being supported. And a lot of the women that are in the workforce right now, that's they're getting their careers together. They're building themselves up like that, and they're not thinking about what am I going to offer the guy?
Yeah.
you know, because a lot of women, the majority of women in my experience, don't feel that they have to offer anything in a relationship. You know, that's all they offer. So that's all.
Yeah, that's true want. Because they can do everything else on their own.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're finding a lot. But you know, it's every woman, and Logan is well, both of them. They're both adopted. Both my boys are adopted. But it's like they came from the same birth. You know, they're same mannerisms. Just very calm. Never a moment's trouble with either one of them. But you know, I had this conversation with him over the weekend. The type of girl that he's going to date in college. You know, because he's in his junior year in college, and and he's like, I don't want all the drama. So
then you're gonna have to not date.
And then we've had that conversation, and you need to know firsthand, well, what type of woman is really gonna get you there. And I think he's figured it out. There's some women that just want to go out and party, and he's not the partying type.
Neither am I.
So you can't go out and be attracted to that woman over there and try and chase her and think you're not going to have the drama.
Exactly.
So now you can find someone that's kind of on the same playing field as you, but she may not be that super hot one that's got her cheeks hanging out. Right. So you just got to take your time. There's somebody for everybody, but don't change you. Don't change you for them. Don't change you. Ask your questions.
If you do change you, you're going to end up just like me.
And they'll change you. And they'll know. They'll know that that's not the real you.
Right.
And you'll end up later on hating that you sacrificed who you were.
Just to try to win them over temporarily.